At a certain level of world management, there are souls whose mission is to not incarnate, but rather to help those who are incarnating here. There are actually engineers there, sitting and thinking about how to get rid of this ballast, including through wars, through cataclysms, disasters like earthquakes, floods, and world wars. It's really like that with everyone, there will be some cataclysms. There will be military actions. There are a bunch of entities that have been drawn to this egregor. He offered a contract to many people. It's impossible to establish contact with the higher self and not discover your purpose. Can money be attractive? Yes, it can be. The higher self has a very positive attitude towards money because money is an opportunity for realization in this world, including one's purpose. This is a deeply mystical experience that cleanses the mind. Contact with your family gives, first of all, an awareness of your purpose. This is the first and most important thing because it is precisely by being there in the afterlife, not in this world, but there, that we make the decision about which family we will come into, to which city. We will decide when we will come, to which country we will come, and so on, whether we will be healthy or sick. In this life, we will be a boy and a girl, and so on and so forth, a bunch of different things, because this is not just like that. For any consequence, there will be a certain cause, and based on specific karmic and other reasons, we, as our higher selves, make the decision to come here. So, by accessing the level of the higher self, we can clearly see why we chose this life in the first place, why we ended up here. This is the first one. Second, the ability to answer questions. Because the higher self lies above the etheric layer, the astral mental one, up there in those higher worlds. From there, you can see better. It's like an eagle that it flies over the highway, it travels along it. Through it, he sees both what was before and what will come after. He sees the entire forest around. So, its perspective is much broader than that of a person who, for example, is walking down below.
It answers questions for them?
The person themselves, yes. About the future, about the past, about myself, about what I should do, where I should go. There, I don't know. The most basic thing is whether I should work at this job or not. Some, by the way, come to me. Students come and ask, is it possible? Can I ask the higher self, what should I eat for breakfast? Will it not be yes? Run away, yes. Will it not be like a little bit sacrilegious? No, absolutely calm. What should I eat? Should I eat an apple or a pear today? It's absolutely easy to see. Should I work at this job or not? Should I live with this person or not? I need go to New Guinea for vacation this year or not? That's the most basic and everyday thing. And it always matches.
Okay, what about some deep questions then? How is our world arranged? Where do we live?
Of course. Also, yes. But for deeper ones, you need to go deeper, into deeper layers. We're already talking about the layered nature of the higher self. The deeper we go, the higher this eagle is again. Flying over the planet at a certain stage, he can already see everything as a whole. It's not just about the forest and the road. Look at the planet, the stars, the universe, the solar system, and so on.
The first is purpose. The second is getting answers to your questions.
Yes. What else? In fact, everything that the human mind can come up with can be extracted through the higher self using certain skills and talents as a form of a specific high spiritual practice. I really like this part. The higher self benefits everyone. And for those who just want to improve their lives. And for those who want, for example, some deep mystical insights, truly deep ones, not from books taken from there, yes, not from movies. Specifically deep mystical ones. Experiencing your own, when you kind of filter it through yourself, that's also the higher self. And the truth, and the truth, and the truth of these. Yes. And you know for sure that it is this way because one thing is, so you come to a guru and the guru tells you about this. The world is arranged like this, but you come to another guru who is also very respected. My favorite. And he says that the world is actually arranged completely differently. And in the higher self, you can see how it is actually arranged. You are your own teacher, your own guru. Plus, working through your traumas, blocks, and all the other things. Your own psychotherapist. How much money can you save on this? Because you are your own. Who do you want? You want the guru? You want the psychotherapist?
So you can heal from something, right? Am I understanding correctly? How does it work? Can you give me the whole list of what it gives if I have contact with the higher self? What then? Am I some kind of superhuman? Or all people in the world have contact with the higher self? How do you see it?
No, unfortunately, not everyone has it. He exists until the age of 3 to 4. Because of this, the child always feels like a little bright angel. This light is a reflection, so to speak. That's the world he was in, from which he literally came just a few days ago. Yes, and if we break it down, again, according to statistics, by the age of 3 or 4, he loses contact. He loses contact with the higher self.
Why is it that we are born with contact, we hear it, and then we lose it?
And play is like a planet. It's the rule of this game here, right? They change, which means they are not so much a rule as the architecture of reality. I'm here, like this, yes, like that. I look at it from the level of physics. The physics of energy, architecture of reality. This is such a reality that maintaining contact with the higher self, it's very high layers, quite complicated.
But you managed to do it, right?
If a person has had there are many incarnations here on this earth.
Oh, by the way, you can even find out how many incarnations I've had in my life.
It's all so complicated even to breathe. Everything is the same. Everything is bigger. I say any topic that comes to mind, anything the human mind can come up with, can be done through the higher self.
And how do you understand? Well, for example, I don't know how you teach, but somehow I came to you. In training, I connected with my higher self. How can I really understand that this is truly my higher self and not some entity that has come here to start telling me about the structure of the universe? Separate them.
Look, there are 2 criteria, the 2 most important criteria. Moreover, this is specifically about my path that I'm talking about. There are many different paths. There is a path of channeling with higher self. I really don't like it because there can actually be an entity that presents itself as the higher self. I will tell you all sorts of things. But there is a very ancient, very pure path of contact with the higher self. It's called the path of the higher self through the meditation of disidentification, mystical meditation. In fact, everyone who works with the higher self along this path is more of a mystic than an esotericist. The higher is a separate topic. So the higher self should reveal itself within you. In the process of disidentification, when you let go of everything, all the attachments of the physical body, all the attachments of the etheric body, all the attachments of the astral body and the mental body of all these bodies, at some point, your inner room, your inner space becomes so pure and serene. I'm giving this analogy. It's a cluttered room, a bunch of bags. You clean and clean and clean, and in the end, you're left with an empty room. You take a sponge, go to the window, and wipe off the layer of dirt that's on the glass because you can now approach that window. The room is already, you see, clean, you wipe off the dirt, and then that sunlight, which is always behind, he starts to pass through the window into the room. You don't do anything to connect with the higher self. You go through layer by layer, step by step, and you simply disidentify until the inner goodness reveals itself. The harmony of relaxation, tranquility, high energies, and vibrations that reveal themselves in the process of disidentification is not very difficult.
Well, I have this question about disidentification, and the word that comes to my mind right away is detachment. So, there are a lot of practitioners who say, I am not the body, I am not the mind, I am nothing. And it's not that I condemn this, I just see examples where sometimes this story about disidentification leads to a point where, in the end, a person has nothing material, no money, no relationships, no communication with people, and so on. That everything here is not what it seems, and I am not what I seem, and everything is nothing, and so on. It leads to a kind of detachment where, in the end, a person has nothing material, no money, no relationships, no communication with people, and so on. So this disidentification, it's not about that?
Let's say it's partially about that. But what you described, that moral practitioners, I understand that they also practice something. They most often reach a certain state of mind, the so-called inner emptiness. When you move into this emptiness, you stop wanting anything at all. As desires fade, this is the empty mind, a practice layer. Thoughts, everything at a higher level disappears completely. This is the empty mind. It's a specific layer that exists in this practice. You can pass through it, but again, it's very easy to check that this is not the higher self. After all, we came here with certain goals and tasks. We had goals. the higher self had goals. If there were no goals, we wouldn't have come here. The higher self had certain desires for which it came here. And in the state of the empty mind, there are no desires anymore.
So you could say that this state of the empty mind is lower than the higher self. You just need to not get stuck on it and move on. The higher self will be revealed.
Yes. A lot of people get stuck right in that.
That's why I asked, yes, even for identification, like, well, that's it. I have nothing. I don't need anything.
When you reach the higher self, it's not like, many people worry. What if I reach the higher self and I probably won't have any socialization? This is a very common topic. Absolutely not. When you truly reach the higher self, that's the layer that, again, it chose for what purpose you came into society. This very intention to come into society was present in almost everyone just from the very beginning. The higher self is about talk. Well, the reason is paid by me. Of course, yes, there must be some reason. The higher self is always about communication. It's always about connection. The more, the better. You won't be able to fly away.
So you could say that a sign that you are definitely not in the higher self is, for example, if you are sitting in a cave, not communicating with anyone, or...
Let's say this, if the purpose was to enter the cave and remain there for a long time, there is no way to sit there for many, many years, as if this is his real goal. But I will tell you honestly, according to statistics, here is what I have had for all these 11 years. I remember I haven't seen a single person out of several thousand whose purpose was specifically to sit in a cave.
Let's pause here about purpose, because this is also a topic with very, very different opinions regarding purpose. Some people perceive purpose as, let's say, you need to be a cook. Some specific activity and you have to do it your whole life. Well, or you should be enlightening people. So some people see it as something very specific, measurable, while others say, what? Your purpose could be, for example, you can do anything. You can be a good mom, any activity, accountant, rock star, it really doesn't matter. But your purpose could be, for example, to think creatively and offer everyone some ideas. Do you understand this essence? They are fundamentally different. Are you in one of them, or do you have some kind of middle path? What are you destined for? What is it about?
I'm for the truth.
Sure, with pleasure.
Aim for the truth. For the specific practice based on the statistics I've gathered over all this time. There's a very wide range of different purposes. It doesn't happen that this person has this and that person has that. It doesn't just happen like that. Everyone has their own path that can lead them to yes, yes, yes. For example, I had a girl I knew, and just recently we worked together on something higher. She, it turned out, had a purpose, and we really reached a higher level together. She has a purpose. It was connected to the conductivity of a certain energy. It can be described with the word, the energy of comfort. The energy of comfort, softness, calmness, and friendliness. So, her purpose was to channel a certain energy. Another girl had the purpose of channeling high vibration energy to the masses with results. So that they, yes. Well, yes, everyone has their own theme. Some people came here to learn everything. Just to learn everything by themselves. Just to learn and gain experience. Some people came here to go through some heavier trials. Maybe, I don't know, military trials or something else, and so on. Everyone has own. But what's interesting is that I can see it clearly, and I talk about it everywhere. As of today, our world is moving upward. Fibroids, move up. I'm not one of those guys who thinks the world is heading towards an apocalypse. No, it's moving upward in special ways. In special ways. We'll probably talk about this a bit more later. For the world to move upward, it has to be pushed upward by someone's hands. The people who are here, the souls that are embodied here through their hands, are also what makes this world move upward. That's why the topic of purpose has started to arise more and more. Like the conductivity of a certain energy.
Yes, but look, what you mentioned is not limited. So to channel a certain energy, so as I said, I can work as a chef channeling that energy, or I can also be a blogger channeling that energy. So isn't it like it used to be? They used to say, your destiny is to be this or that.
No, I've never seen anything like that.
So from the perspective of the higher self, it doesn't matter if you're a blogger or whatever, as long as you're channeling that energy, so to speak.
No. Look, here's what I have. For example, my purpose is to reveal a bit of the cards, to gather information from all over the world, the most diverse kinds, and adapt it to the higher self. I am here for people, and together with the very idea of the higher self, to channel the world. I'm like a conduit for the higher self. I gather all the information that is somehow related to this topic. So for me, it's both energetic and informational. It's no wonder you haven't lost that connection with the higher self.
I guess that's it, yeah.
That's how it is for me. I specifically chose a family that would provide the conditions that wouldn't allow me to lose that connection.
Yes, that's true. You're saying you chose a certain family and on. I'm curious, who chooses? We've touched on this question already, but who, where, how? It's some kind of space where all the souls are sitting and they're like, I don't know. They're looking at the computer screen. I want some kind of picture for our mind. 3D is here too. And well, there are some light energies sitting there and somehow... So how does it look?
Well, first of all, it's the spirit that chooses. Spirit, it's the higher self. It's the higher self, yes, in a certain space of choice. That's true. It can be described in many different ways. In progressive hypnosis, different people see it in completely different ways, including in the form of computers, screens, and so on, as I remember it. By the way, I've been there a few times, right at the moment of choosing the environment. There were no screens there. There were no screens. There was just some kind of knowledge. I just knew that I was coming here to this world. I had several paths, and I was choosing between them, and you really chose this destiny to make contact with the higher. I see it, roughly speaking, as a contract for life. It's not exactly the destiny that you need to fulfill. Someone up there is talking to you. That's what it's talking about. No, you choose the contract for yourself. That's exactly the one you want to fulfill.
What happens if you don't meet?
You'll have to do it again.
This one.
Well, usually yes. So it's also a chance to chat. Usually, yes. Here, you see, look. If a person chooses a contract, for example, to channel this energy, like the energy of goodness, harmony, relaxation, then they, as their higher self, a spirit, wants to play this game. So there is a reason for that. The reason, again, for every consequence, there is its own reason. Most likely, he didn't have enough of this in his past lives. He was probably rolling all the time, in some other wars, in conflicts, or something else. And now he wants to master the energy of being conflict-free. Here, right here on this earth. Because it's one thing there. When you're high and pure and everything is good for you. But it's another matter. When you come here and there's people around you, irritation, temptations, city, traffic jams, wars, and so on.
How we look at what we have conditionally, where the spirit resides. Ideally, there is no time there at all. It's a space where everything supposedly happens at once.
Everywhere. In certain layers, higher layers of the spirit, yes, there is no time there. And if even higher, they're already. And there is no space even higher, it's closer to the absolute, to God. And how to reconcile this, that on one hand, everything happens simultaneously.
On the other hand, if I don't fulfill my purpose in this life, then I will need to reincarnate and do it all over again. Well, or something similar. So these little models don't quite match up.
Look, yeah, I got it.
You'll get it.
Yes. After death. You don't step into a world where there is no time. It's important to understand. After death, you find yourself in not very high layers of the higher self. And you can meditate after death, being in certain layers of the higher self. You can meditate on higher layers of the higher self. It's a very interesting topic, but not all souls engage in this. So, there are many higher selves. There are many layers, many layers of the higher self, the one we're talking about right now. It's quite an earthly ray that those higher authorities have sent down here to this planet, and here you make those very decisions. So, if we're talking specifically about the afterlife worlds of Earth, there is definitely time there. There is a past, there is a future. It just moves a little differently. It moves a little faster. Usually, roughly speaking, it's about 70 years here, while there it could be around 20 years. Something along those lines. It's like this So it moves a little faster there, but not by much. No, not a second. The space outside of time, you can feel it. I was there, certain practices, very deep ones, including from here in the incarnation. You can push it all the way up to that level, but that's a different level. It's a different topic. Different level.
Okay, destiny. So how can I, being in this body right now, understand my purpose? I think this is such a popular question right now. Right now, everyone is just rushing around looking for it. That's purpose, because clearly people are not satisfied with something in their lives. They feel something, but they can't understand what it is, because we haven't fully developed all these abilities yet, and there are a lot of questions for people. That's how I asked you. Yes, I still want to be a chef there. Or it doesn't really matter who I will be, what my purpose is. So it's one thing if I were to be a chef or a teacher. Yeah, here it's somehow more primitive and straightforward, right? And when you need to manifest or channel certain energies here, it's even more complicated. How can a person understand what their purpose is?
You know, all the people we've connected with their higher selves, we practically all came to the understanding that on one hand, they are already intuitively channeling that energy. They already know intuitively what needs to be done. But connecting with the higher self enhances this. How should I put it? This intuitive feeling, it sharpens it like a diamond that's being cut from all sides, and they start to realize much better what they need to do. Well, connecting with the higher self enhances this. How should I put it? This intuitive feeling sharpens it like a diamond that's being cut from all sides, and they start to realize much better what they need to do. Because yes, if there's no contact with the higher self, 50-50, some intuitive. This is like when I had an intuitive meditation at 7 years old. Yeah, it wasn't a deep story, but all the people who come to you, and it's just like that. In your opinion, do they have some kind of contact with yourself, or is it always different? Some come to sharpen it, and then they go through the topic. Purpose. This topic is definitely covered in the course. Definitely. So this is one of the most important topics, but closer to the end of the course, because this is a more complex topic. Here, those who came to sharpen this topic see their purpose in shades. They had already felt it intuitively before. They start to see their purpose in shades. They had already felt it more or less on an intuitive level before. But here they start to feel it very clearly. And those who come in completely from scratch often experience a revelation, a mystical insight, realizing that this is how it is, that someone has already lived this in their life. Someone, not just anyone, applies it to life and starts to live according to their purpose.
But everyone sees their purpose?
And if you establish contact there, but if you haven't, then there are certain steps you need to take, certain things you need to work on yourself. There are specific criteria in the course. Yes, there are definite stages, definite criteria in the course, so everyone goes through them. And those who go through this path establish contact and see their purpose. Everyone, 100%. And those who go through this path establish contact and see their purpose. 100%. It's impossible to reach higher self.
I can't even recognize my purpose. How can I understand that a person has no contact with the higher self at all? When you say different ones come to you, how do you determine that? This one is at 50%, but here it's completely silent.
So I knew you were going to ask me this question. I prepared myself. I wrote it down right in my phone. If it's okay, then yeah, of course, name it and I'll take a look. I specifically analyzed a lot of people in SEO to highlight the main criteria. That there is absolutely no contact with the higher self.
You can check in with yourself right now.
So point one. If there is a strong ego,
there are already a lot of questions.
Let's sharpen it a bit. If a person criticizes, this is ego. If a person criticizes, if they argue, if there is no inner peace and acceptance of the world in all its manifestations, that's the main criterion that there is no contact with the higher self. In the comments, for example, yes, there you are. What are you all talking about? About some higher self. Then they connect to it. They latch on to each other. These are two people who have no contact with the higher self. Unfortunately, I've seen thousands, hundreds, millions of guys like that. This is the first point. Point two, blames everyone around, looks for enemies. A lot of inner aggression. So they constantly blame the government, blames anyone, perhaps, I don't know, God in all of this. No, contact with higher self. This is a very clear criterion. Point three, insists that only my truth is the true truth, and tries to teach everyone around them You wouldn't believe how many guys write to me on this very one, everywhere in all my social media. You're doing everything wrong. I mean, you're all wrong. So you talk about the highest, it's not the highest, it's all completely different. Now I'm going to teach you, just listen to me. I'll pass on a huge amount of wisdom, a huge amount that's also for the guys. I just scan everything. Almost no one can really look at a photo. I somehow get it from the photo. Yeah, like it is, like a photo. What is that? Is there contact with your higher self? Is there contact with your higher self? Is there light? Is there a certain layer that you can scan?
Contact higher self.
Is there contact with your higher self? Is there light? Is there a certain layer that you can scan? Besides, my wife and I usually do this thing together. We watch. Here's the backside of the phone. Turn the phone over, tune into the spark, the higher self. The spark shines brightly. If you tune into that spark, the spark as a manifestation of the higher self in a person, you'll see it. For people with a clear higher self, the spark shines brightly. More blocks squeeze it within boundaries. But here they are, the blocks, and in people with a clear higher self, the spark is clearly, directly, shining brightly, and directly moving here. And the more blocks there are, the more it's kind of squeezed within those boundaries, which is definitely an interesting topic. Point 4. If there are any strong images of yourself, for example, as a doctor, teacher, director, businessman, or spiritual teacher. It's like if a person is playing into this, so I'm the school principal, I have to look like this, I have to behave like this.
Rain and stepping in.
This kind of thing gives you a release, Lenin, with the role. Yeah, it's usually called the self-image in esotericism. Yes, and if there's a very strong self-image, it really interferes with your connection with yourself. I really do. Because on the contrary, you need to completely disidentify from this. It's the opposite process. You identify so much that this image becomes a part of you. You no longer see that it's just an image. You kind of stop playing it and it just becomes a part of you. And the 5th point, by the way, is also interesting. If a person often finds themselves in unpleasant situations, in financial hardship, there are many divorces, some everyday problems, some constantly getting hurt everywhere, like getting beaten up in an alley by bullies or having something taken away.
There's a black stripe on the table.
A black streak that just seems to go on and on. Yes, a bad streak.
I hear a lot about Bali, that people come here and they start experiencing some kind of black streak that just doesn't end. Yeah. It's kind of like people have lost their connection with their higher self here.
No, it just, well, they probably didn't have it much. Most likely they just, with its strong energy, started to squeeze out of them from their mental body, of the astral body, the etheric body. Blocks beliefs. So it's like highlighting, by the way, a person who touches the higher self at a certain stage starts to see their blocks very clearly. It's very clear, like a flashlight that shines, yes, and he can see it clearly.
What do you actually mean by blocks? You also say that it's like a wall, that what you see in the photo is the spark of the spirit in a person. And around it, like a wall, where is it? So it's in a person's field.
It's in the field, like this mental body, perhaps a blocked mental body.
So all the blocks are in the mental...
Of course, it's the mind, so the blocks are in the mind. The mind is the mental body.
Well, give a couple of examples like that. It hinders link to higher self. Am I understanding right? More blocks linked to higher self.
Of course. Of course. There are just thousands of them. Millions of them. There are a lot of them. For example, blocks related to money. Money makes a person worse. Money is bad. Actually, I always read the question about blocks because it's hard for me. Talking about blocks, because I don't have any, I've worked through a lot of blocks. That's true. So sometimes it's even hard for me to communicate with a person because he's trying to ask, how many blocks are there? But there are just so many of them.
So which have you worked? Well, let's talk about you.
About me, for example? Well, yeah, let's start with me. All the blocks that are related to grievances. I had grievances against people on very different situations. I worked through all of them, through the higher self. There were blocks.
Through higher self. Through the higher self. I worked through the blocks, yes. So it's not psychotherapy or something. No, through the higher self.
Psychotherapy is a good topic. But what I'm talking about right now was only through the higher self. For example, I had severe stuttering. Very severe. I had fears. I had fears related to self-expression. It's also a block. Fears related to not being able to say no. So I was a bit of a shy boy my whole life. These are blocks. Blocks. Beliefs. patterns that come partly from my mom, partly from my dad, partly from past lives, and so on. I also worked through all of this via the higher self. Again, I had very severe stuttering, very severe. I couldn't say a single word. I couldn't even make a phone call. In fact, just being here, sitting and talking is such an achievement for me. It's just fantastic.
Well, yes, fantastic.
Before, I couldn't do it. It was like dra 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 dra, and that was it. Usually, that's how we ended communication with people.
So, roughly how much time did it take you to connect with the higher self? I'm still not quite getting it. Yes. So I have this technique where I went in, connected with the higher self, and worked through it a bit. I understand how it works through psychotherapy, and well, I think many people go to a psychologist. Right now, we live in such a time. Can you explain how it works with the higher self, and how much time did it take you to work through it?
Look at some blocks. The simplest method, really the simplest method. How do you do that? For example, you know that you have a block. It works, specifically in that case. If you already know that it's a block, for example, there's fear, there's resentment towards someone or something else, it's usually always a block. A block always feels constricting. By the way, just a little hack for the viewers. You mean in the body? Yes, in the body, it always constricts, it always limits, it always sets certain boundaries. Yes. And the absence of a block, on the contrary, expands the feeling of calmness, relaxation. You feel it, it's a certain fear, a constricting fear in the body. You go into the higher self and look for the reason. You just go into the level of the higher self. I catch that part. A bit of psychotherapy of parts in connection with the higher self. I mean, you look for what? The reason. So you find something there, either from childhood or certain events, or maybe even from a past life. With my wife, for example, when we were working through blocks, we would go in 20 past lives, in 30 past lives, specifically through blocks. So, for example, we feel a certain irritation towards something that arises in our joint interaction with her. We go in and, for example, we see that in medieval Japan, she didn't chop it with an axe. Well, conditionally.
Listen, that's a really interesting question about these past lives. You see yourself, I've heard that opinion that we all come from one single source, and in fact, on some layers, we are one whole. Basically, we can realize ourselves here as anyone, even in the Middle Ages, and I can realize myself as you, and so on. How do you determine that these are actually your past lives? Is it just some kind of fantasy, or I don't know? Where does it come from to you?
Again, if you're doing this through hypnosis, through meditations that are not connected to the higher self, there can be distortions. And they will, we had a certain time, we were conducting an experiment. We were looking into past lives through the higher self and past lives just through hypnosis. Through the higher self, specifically, if it is truly the higher self, you clearly know, like 1,000% you know that this is your past life. Because it comes with all the emotions, with details, with specifics. Your mind just can't make it up. And if it's through hypnosis, there's about 40-50% from the mind. So there are some images mixed in there. Yes. A true past life. For 100% that this is your past life. It's like claircognizance.
It's like claircognizance.
Yeah, you just know that it happened to you and that's it. And there, no one can convince you that it's just from the mind or something else. Usually you just smile and say, well, yeah, and what happens?
Did you see that blog with the higher self's guidance? Remove it.
You rethink it. You rethink it through the higher self. With higher self, you see reason. Reason of what?
The true one, yes, the real one.
The true reason. Again, a story from my life. Yeah, take these. Here, I wasn't really liked in school because I was like that. Special, yeah. And for me, especially around school, well, a lot of hurt has piled up. I went in there and I could clearly see in the higher self how it looked. What did I need that school for? What did I need those girls and boys for, right? What did I need that experience for? And then when you understand all the reasons, you no longer have any resentment because there's nothing resentful about you chose this yourself. You chose to be in that school yourself. That's it. And it's not just from the mind. Right now, it sounds kind of strange. It's a deep mystical experience. Again, the path of the higher, it's the path of a mystic. It's a deeply mystical experience that somehow cleanses the mind. It's like this very fear or the self-touch with that structure changes you. This fear, or whatever else it is, just burns away. It simply crumbles to dust.
And everything, yeah, it's interesting. I had similar feelings in my experiences. Yeah, I understand what you're talking about. So am I right in understanding that you can, by accessing the higher, if I can put it correctly, at the level of the higher, I thought and reflected on a certain problem, I can, roughly speaking, rethink it and remove it in one go?
Of course, yes.
So really, just one go is enough?
Truly higher.
I'm asking you, how much time did it take you to get rid of stuttering? It's such an ailment. I think it took him several years, with speech therapists, if we're being honest. How many hooks do you have on him?
I have a lot of hooks on it. Too many, a lot, way too many, and I had a lot of different situations that led to it. Yeah, that's usually how it is. Especially if it's done through a psychotherapist, there are always 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 specific roots of the cause. Yeah, that's the same. And here, I didn't have the goal to do a sprint and to do it faster. That's on my back. Hurrying, not rushing, but all the resentments from my whole life. Maybe I worked on it for a couple of months in that mode, just like that, very slowly. When you're going somewhere and there's really nothing much to do, well, you can tap into the higher self. I work through my grievances. By the way, I often do this when I'm waiting somewhere, like in line or on a minibus. I tapped into the higher self. I looked into my past life, worked through something, rethought it.
Okay, look, we're on the topic of blocks with you. You say you tap into the higher self, right? Well, it's clear when there's a connection with the higher self. We go in, look around, everything is clean. Transparent, clear, we clear it out. But as I understand it, it's the blocks that prevent you from connecting with the higher self. It creates a kind of vicious circle. As long as a person has blocks, they can't connect with their higher self and can't remove them. So how do you break this vicious circle?
That's actually the best question and most difficult one. If the blocks are very strong, it's like stones in a river. So yes, if the stones are very big, they completely block the river. Thank God, guys like that usually don't come to me. Usually they have such strong blocks, this inner resistance that arises from these blocks. It usually evokes an emotion in them. Yeah, what he's talking about, what he's going to do. Well, they even look, but they won't see it. Either they'll watch and spit. Yeah. I think after this interview, there will be those kinds of people. That's absolutely normal. People like that usually don't come. Those who come have some kind of response. Like, yes, they need this. So at least there's some thread going through.
Yes.
This means that there's at least a light stream. They have a river that isn't completely blocked. And for those kinds of people, basically, they don't have such rigid blocks that completely block them and prevent them from going anywhere. That's why they get there, but it just takes longer. Some take longer, some are faster. According to my statistics, the ones who come to the top the fastest are the happy ones. Happy. These are happy people who live and enjoy life.
They already have a connection with their higher self. It's strange they go for some decisions.
It's not very conscious for them, not very well defined. They feel the energy, but how do they work with it? No. They don't understand their purpose, for example, or something else. Yes, those happy, easygoing people who don't get offended, who don't get upset. Those people I mentioned, they don't act aggressively. They just live their lives. They're comfortable, happy. Everything works out perfectly for them. In a month, they already have this connection with their higher family. It's just incredibly strong. And it's precisely they who strengthen the connection. In the course, they come to my course and in just 6 months, they strengthen their connection. This connection is very strong. But for the other guys, again, the more blocks there are, the longer it sometimes takes to get there. And sometimes, if the blocks are really strong, I have therapists in the course who work with them to help process these blocks. And after that, those who endure and don't avoid reaching the top, I can say with 100% certainty, why should they? Definitely. But it hurts. She worked through her blocks, meaning that the process of death is very painful. So a person can cry a lot, really a lot.
And even such an interesting question arises. Should the ego really die at all? Because there are many different chains involved. This is saying, this is actually a parasite, this entity. Some say it's a classic part of our psyche that we need to not get lost in the day. And even the fact that I don't need anything for us to move forward is also a controversial element in different concepts. You see, do we need to kill it or what?
I approach the ego from a utilitarian practice perspective. The ego, I always refer to it as the term for an exaggerated emphasis on oneself, separating it from the general flow of life. That's what I mean by exaggerated. The ego. If we understand it as just I, a certain sense of self, a certain identity, yes, please, it doesn't interfere with the higher self. But sometimes this very self, it stands out so much that it actually exaggerates itself from the general flow of life. And that's when it interferes with the connection to the higher self. For example, a person comes to a car dealership talking down to staff. Bentley. He says, guys, please, this, and he talks to the masters like they're slaves. Yes, that's ego. Or a boss points at their subordinates saying, run over here, go bring that, bring me this, yelling at them and insulting them. In a collective, this is also the case, and so on. It's precisely this exaggerated importance of oneself. And what's interesting is that beneath the ego, there is always fear. Of course, always, yes. There is always, absolutely always fear. And you asked me today exactly how this loss of contact with the higher self perhaps happens. Usually around 3 to 4 years old, the ego begins to emerge as this exaggerated separation of the self. You can really see it. I don't see any connections to egregores in children at 3 to 4 years old. I never see it at 3 to 4 years old, connections to egregores like gender, age, and so on. By the age of 7, 8, or even 9, all these social roles, the identifications with them, yes. And initially, the ego is born. By the age of 4 or 5, you can really indeed see the ego in some kids. I just have 2 kids and we talk a lot with their mom. How much ego do they have? With mom, it's 10-5.
How's their ego?
Oh, let's say a 10-year-old is doing well.
It's good in terms of balance.
Yes. A 5-year-old has certain problems. This is again one environment. Yes, the parents are absolutely different from the heart. The 5-year-old is definitely more sensitive. Right now, I think we will fix this.
Yes, a lot is falling into place for me right now. So, am I correct in understanding that there is, let's say, a healthy balance? This ego, right? Yes. That which drives a person through life, and a person uses the ego, well, for some of their everyday stories, for their daily activities. When you have an exaggerated, as you say, view, that's when these distortions start happening, and it begins to interfere with the connection to the higher. And it blocks him. And this can already happen directly in childhood. Yes. What does it depend on? So why does someone's ego start to inflate like that, while for others it doesn't?
That's an excellent question. A process that has been studied over many years. Usually it looks like this. Until 3, 4, there is a link to spirit. Mind relies on spirit. The mind is designed to rely on the spirit. In fact, there's nothing wrong with the mind. I'm not one of those practitioners who,
I think so too.
Mind all this terrible. The mind is a computer. So the mind is a computer that ideally serves the interest of the spirit. So I often use the example of a car. The software and the driver. The driver is the spirit. The car is the body in which it drives. And the mind is the software. But often it happens that the software loses connection spirit. And then the autopilot kicks in, and this autopilot is already speeding along wherever it wants, into any bushes. And somewhere around the age of 3, if there have been only a few incarnations here in this world, on this planet, and if the soul, the spirit itself, is not very experienced, then it might happen. So the story goes that the connection with the spirit starts to fade because of the very high energies. There's a big difference between here and there, but the mind still needs something to lean on. And these psychological survival functions kick in. Ego arises. It's like an exaggerated expression of oneself out of the flow of life, and it's done to make it less scary to live here under any circumstances. It always comes down to fear again, the fear of the world. And a strong person, he is very afraid of it. He will be hurt, poked in some way, just like that dangerous what to lean on, you lean on it, which kind of strengthens the ego, but it doesn't elevate the spirit beyond the language of psychotherapy. So our protectors appear trying to safeguard the child. But they do it as best as they can, as they say. Yes? Yes. So the mind no longer has contact with the spirit, but it tries to activate protective reactions.
So it depends on the fact that, let's say, an inexperienced soul means having few incarnations here on Earth.
On Earth, well, the experience of the spirit is also taken into account. Adaptation in new worlds is quick. Star souls help. With many lives, you'll learn quickly. Star souls guide us through different practices.
Maybe not in the first life, maybe in the third or fifth, but it's interesting. I just think about it. A lot will be decided by the concept that we have star souls and all that. Lady Antarian, yes, from that planet, you have many incarnations there, and here you are cool. What I was saying recently is that you have so many incarnations on that planet, and here you are, just so cool, and it seems like everyone is so great, but at least according to these forecasts from various masters, here, everyone faces their ego and can't find their way. Well, many...
Here, indeed, it's a very peculiar topic. If we talk about the age of the spirit, then conditionally, very conditionally, we can distinguish between young souls, middle-aged souls, older souls, and more mature souls. I also created a special system from 0 to 80 years. At a certain stage, I learned to equate this age spirit to a certain age conditionally, from 0 to 80 physical years here. But young souls, who often end up in the ego, they can come from Sirius, they can come from high planets. Because young souls, again, this is purely my experience. In my view, from what I've seen in the higher realms, there are two types. It's either street kids or kids, as I would call them. Kids from such paradise-like places. Either from the streets, meaning they go through really tough lessons. Again, it depends on the spirit, what the spirit chooses. That is the style that is closer to it. It is like the style of music. If it chooses a style for its incarnation in some harsh worlds with wars, cataclysms, or something else, then it won't come from Sirius. But there are many worlds like those paradise worlds where everything is good. And you can also be a child there, just growing up in more nurturing conditions. There are really many worlds like those paradise-like worlds where everything is very good. And you can also be a child there, just growing up in more nurturing conditions. And by the way, many of the guys who are coming now, these star souls, in terms of spirit age, they are quite young. Because they were following the model of not street kids, but children, this paradise garden.
You mean the children that are being born to you now? Yes, already with many conscious parents? Yes, that's all.
I mean this children specifically, the age of the spirit. Yes, yes, yes. So if he was small, meaning the spirit itself has gone through its childhood. It might not necessarily be in some harsh conditions. It could also be in paradise-like ones. And then they come to this, yes, to this earth, Sirius, for example. And at that point, well, at the level of a 10-year-old child, that's his spirit. It will be very hard for him here. I personally know about 10 people who came from there, from very high worlds, where it's incredibly difficult for them here. It's just incredibly hard. They are not very high in level. Well, not high. They are not very mature. Not a very mature spirit, and they feel very bad here.
And how do you see that? You just look, and one glance at a person is enough for you. Is that how it works?
Well, basically, yes. Yes, basically. Yes. Well, if we're specifically scanning on this topic, then basically, yes. You can do it through photos, or you can do it in person.
I have such a temptation, but I won't ask him about it right now.
I don't like talking about this topic.
I don't want to know.
I can share with the viewers. It will be interesting how this practice came to me, how to determine the age of a spirit.
And how can you even tell who comes to the teaching?
I'll tell you now. I once closed my school for 2 years in the middle of the year during these 11 years. So actually, formally, it's been 9 years, but there was a 2-year break in the middle. When I went into deep work, I really went into deep processing. For 2 years, I was meditating on a higher level. I was looking into who had completely transformed everything. At that time, I had a real block at the level of my mind, like I felt I wasn't quite worthy to handle such a high topic. It's like you're saying, I lack experience. I really went into almost 2 years of deep work, just through meditations and various practices. And in the end, I had a real request for the higher, like whether it was time for me to return or not. And from the higher, I received this practice, specifically this practice in response to my request. You know, when you reach out to the higher, you can draw different talents and practices from there. That's exactly when I first understood how it works. It comes as a complete archive, fully finished. You just know exactly how to do this practice. My age was quite high. It was encouraging. Higher than many, many others. Well, it wasn't like globally higher, but for me, it was really encouraging for the mind. I realized that, oh, I actually need to carry this forward. And that's when I returned to it again. It's like I've already stepped out of that shadow and returned to this practice.
You know, right now, many people I've heard say that those souls who truly carry some deep, true knowledge, they constantly have this imposter syndrome, all of that too. Why is it set up so strangely? Why is it that those people with just inflated egos find it so easy to assert themselves, to teach others how to live? Well, here are our favorite commentators, yes, the ones who touched on it. So, it's all easy, lively, and organic there, and other people sometimes listen to them. But those people who truly have sacred knowledge inside, they have this inner compass, some kind of conscience, I don't know, an internal calibration, a connection with the higher, right? Why do they think they are unworthy? This whole story is my favorite.
I just see that at the level I'm at right now, you also go deeper and deeper into that higher state. I see there is more ahead. It's such an endless space that you can explore. And I realize that compared to many, this is a fact. It's also something new. It's a fact. I've gone really deep up there and there's still so much more to do. And when I see this endless space right there, deep inside.
Well, I think it stretches from there, right? I understand that the broader the picture, yes. And when a person is already connected to the greater whole, they see the vastness of the entire universe. He understands how small he is in all of this, even with his level. And when a person has a very narrow view of the world, it seems like they're the coolest one here. Interesting, right?
But then you turn around and see that there are guys still behind you. You think, oh, well, since I'm there, I'll tell them nicely. Because you can already see this huge field in front of you. You think, oh, how much more is there?
Listen, so you worked through this block, right? I also worked through it with the higher self, right?
Yeah, there are also a lot of blocks. I have a whole list here. I can read it to myself. Let's at least do it this way so I can tell you about it.
What kind of blocks do people usually come to you for training with? They say that while communicating, I write down everyone's different issues.
I write down everyone's different issues. Well, some people have money problems. In general, there are 3 areas: money, relationships, and health. That's the classic stuff, really. That's mainly what they come with. Well, first of all about money. About money. Money is the higher self. By the way, right now, cucumbers and tomatoes thrown at the camera. Cucumbers and tomatoes being thrown at the camera. These guys are the viewers, some of them. But I'll say this, it's a very controversial thought. Money is such a pure, warm, and pleasant energy. Actually, because again, money is an egregore. Anyone can. An egregore consists of the collective thoughts that people invest into it. The egregore of money is either I earned money, hooray, cool, or I spent money on something that is really close and good to me, hooray. This is the main emotion that people around the world invest in the egregore of money. When they talk about manipulation, demons, all that 666 stuff and so on, they all made it up. All these priests came up with it. A certain layer of management. The egregore is the collective thought of everyone who is connected to it. 8 billion people on Earth share money. Everyone, and 8 billion people on the entire planet are connected to money. Every day, yes. And the main energy, after all, the main emotion is joy. Hooray, I earned money. Exactly. So, the energy of money from the perspective of the higher self is soft. It's a warm energy. Usually when I say this, people are like, really?
They don't believe you?
They start having problems.
What do you mean?
All of their blocks start to light up properly. Very strongly.
Great. If it triggers you, it means you have money.
It's really triggering. It's triggering a very large framework. These are the beliefs that I've written down over many years. working with blocks through the higher self with people. Money corrupts. Many think rich people are thieves, especially in Russia. Or for example, all the rich thieves are generally such a mainstream, especially in Russia. It's commonly believed that if you have a lot of money, it means something's off, that you're not pure. Further, money should be earned by one person, only a man. This is especially in the topic, Rodnovery, in the topic of Slavism. Slavic Vedic history, that a woman should not touch a Vedic woman. That's a whole separate story. From there, you'll see clearly its essence and the higher self's perspective, and you'll be able to see clearly from there what's going on.
And here's what the higher self thinks about all of this. If it came to that,
a light smile with acceptance. This is it's really funny indeed. My work is needed by no one. A lot of it is already similar.
Classic lessons that therapists really work with. So it turns out that therapists guide through the noise. Me.
To learn. Let's put it this way. They cleanse the mental body, but a cleansed, empty mental body, as we've already figured out today, doesn't necessarily mean contact with the higher self. It could just be an inner emptiness. It could just be that, well, a person lives their life and nothing really bothers them. But there is still no contact with the higher self. So contact with the higher self, I see it as a combination of practices to reach that level and then dive deeper into it. So going deeper into that. So in my context, if we take 7 years intuitively, at least those intuitive first steps, well, that's about 25 years.
I actually want to talk to you about what's in that higher self. You've mentioned more than once that you got the practice. You say you can attract talents from the higher self. What does it look like?
Yeah. I'll tell you a story from my life like everyone loves. I've always written a lot. Throughout my life, all sorts of books, but I've always wanted to learn how to write poetry. Because I've always wanted to form a music group, because again, my purpose is to channel this energy of the higher self. And I've always had the thought, why not do this, for example, through music? Because one thing is lectures or interviews, that's definitely interesting. But through music, it's more effective, it's impactful. You step onto the stage and everyone immediately feels that energy.
Yes, that's what your mind thinks.
Yes, that's my mind. That's how it thinks. The higher self. But by the way, it looked a little different. Well, I really wanted to, so I sat down. I was trying to write these poems. After all, music needs lyrics. We asked different guys to write these poems. They were giving them to me. Well, that's not it. Well, no, there's the higher self there. If the songs are written on demand, then the very essence of it starts to fade away. I could rhyme love with carrot maximum. Love, carrot, blood, well, something along those lines. With the help of this kind of lift it's unlikely that I can convey the energy of the higher self. And I was really learning, struggling. And at some point I thought, and if I managed to capture that energy, this practice, I was already at that time practicing age determination. She was already with me. And I thought, why not try to request something from there, for example, the ability to write poetry? Suddenly it will come. I did it purely intuitively. I accessed the higher self. I felt the very essence of it. It's like the very essence of it. The idea of writing poetry. I felt that yes, there was approval. So I sent a request to my higher self. 7 days go by. Suddenly I really feel like writing poetry. I feel urge. I sit down, take a piece of paper and start writing. That was just on a level of fantasy. It's hard to put this into words. I start writing and I realize that I can actually write poetry now. Yeah, they're not just being written. They started coming to me with yat letters. So with these hard signs at the end, like in pre-revolutionary Russia, well, honestly, even though I had many years of contact with the higher self by that time, I didn't expect anything like this. It was so unusual. I'm writing it down and it's so beautiful. I showed it to my wife. She says, oh, that's cool. Is it like Pushkin? I said, no, it's me. She didn't believe me. She says, I don't believe you. She says, well, describe something else in the same style for me. Right in front of her, I produced 2 more paragraphs. She was like, wow. Her eyes were just like 2 saucers, you know? Then I left that topic for about 6 months. I came back after 6 months. And my skill got even better over those 6 months. I didn't do anything for that. It just matured within me.
So, can you really pull out any ability from there, conditionally speaking?
Which has the approval of the higher self.
What does that mean?
Well, if you, for example, want to rob a bank, you reach out to the higher self, and if there's no approval to rob the bank, then it won't work.
The bank is already such a way to get publicity. I think if we're talking about robbing a bank, then the person probably wants money. He can really tap into the higher self. I mean, how is he going to say it? Give me money.
Well, for example, you can attract money. Yes, you can.
And approval for that.
Yes, the higher self. I have a very positive attitude towards money because money is the opportunity to realize oneself in this world, including your purpose. Again, for example, I don't know, if I had absolutely no money, I wouldn't be traveling the world. I wouldn't have traveled to Bali. I wouldn't have gone anywhere else. I went to Bali and I recorded my last course on the higher self, which I have at my school there in Bali, completely with a different energy than it was before. That's already the millionth version of this course. But before that, there wasn't. Before that, the energy was different. And so on. The higher self, I always have a good attitude towards money. Absolutely always. You can attract money. Yes. Well, for example, I don't know, let's say a person wants to acquire some talent that is really, well, he doesn't need it at all. Or a skill. For example, look, a person doesn't just want money, but wants a lot of money. So that he has golden ones, there were toilets, there were yachts, and so on. For example, something like this. So he wants to become a billionaire. To open your own international company. As an option, open an international business and work in that field. From the perspective of the higher self, it may very well feel like there isn't, but that's not a fact.
It's not a fact. So some will be told yes and some will be told no.
And if not, your desire will just disappear. This is the kind of topic. Yeah, what did you want? Yeah, I'm going to go for a higher education and I'll become a billionaire now. I went for a higher education and I even stopped wanting to be a billionaire.
But it's not like there's some kind of disappointment.
So there's no disappointment from that. If you really went for something better, I can really see that your desire just fades away and that's it.
And what comes in its place?
Understanding what needs to be done. Yes, understanding the essential path and purpose.
Yeah. Tell me, maybe you have some examples of what talents or abilities your students have brought out. Maybe something like that besides poetry. What else? Money. Everyone is asking for money.
Everyone is asking for money. I don't know why everyone is asking for money. So money, yeah, a huge number of guys are pulling out money. Yes.
How does it happen? So they come, they learn, and you say, well, do this practice. And how do they? The next morning, a bag of money. Does someone bring it? Yes, but what is that?
Well, for example, look. So a person comes in and they're really struggling with money. He reaches the level of the higher self. First of all, he immediately sees all his blocks, including those that I described. He works through them. After that, after a while, he starts again, reaching the higher self. I just send a request, I want money. And if the first time his higher self revealed the blocks, saying something like, work through these and you'll get money. If the second time he can there will be a feeling that everything is good. You're already ready to receive this energy of money.
If the blocks are removed,
There, after a week, for example, or two, events start happening. New job opportunities just line up. Someone offered a job, someone suggested something else, anything at all. An inheritance, suddenly from grandpa. It appeared from Africa. Like right now, yeah, in these spam emails, you never seen him. They send letters like, I am your grandpa. From Africa, yes. You don't know me, but I have $1 million for you.
So don't fall for that. Yeah, it's spam. You know, this happens. I just mentioned that when you want to reach the higher self, you say you want money, but in reality, there's nothing there. Right now, there's a lot, especially in all the esoterics, of some restrictions and prohibitions that you need to fulfill your purpose to get money. You can't just ask for it. There are these beliefs that simply asking for money is bad. You need to fulfill your purpose to get money. You can't just ask for it. There are these beliefs that simply asking for money is bad. Conditionally. So there's nothing like that. Indeed, you can reach the level of the higher self. I can say, yeah, I just want money, for example. Yes, you can, and there won't be any judgment from the perspective of the higher self. The higher self is a high part of ourselves. There's no judgment there, no fears, no irritations, none of that. There's complete acceptance of everything. There are no irritations. There's complete acceptance. If you want money, there is complete acceptance of everything. If you want money and it doesn't interfere too much to your incarnation here,
So again, for example, perhaps you wanted to work on things like love, acceptance, or something else, or family life. Well, that's your purpose. Well, it's part of it, right? And you asked to become the director of an international corporation. So you'll be in meetings your whole life instead of with that family. Then there will be a clear feeling there that this is not your path, because your path is more about family. But if you want money, we'll figure out how to get you, maybe not as much as with an international corporation, but just enough to feel harmonious. Your higher self always plans for you to have as much money as is harmonious for your life, not more and not less, because if there's too much, it still leads to some kind of imbalance. If there's very little, that's also an imbalance, and higher self is balanced, so money is all good. I'll share a story from my own life, again, from my own. Not long ago, I practiced going to a very deep layer with the higher self, Wolf Watch, in a very, it's so interesting. It's so interesting. So if there are certain layers where there are really karmas, there's a feeling of karmas, some causes and effects. There, the embodiment needs to be experienced. All of this needs to be fulfilled at a higher level. Even that is gone, even the very idea of purpose is gone. You can feel it it's like, I don't know, you're playing a video game and basically you don't care what your character is doing. Well, like I put him in the lake, in the forest, right? And there isn't really any good or bad there anymore. No good or bad, just a game. Karma's unreal. Karma doesn't exist, it's just a game. This might sound strange, but it's clear. You see the game in everything. Annoyances aren't part of it anymore. It's all a game. From here, it looks perfectly clear. It's a mystical experience. You start to see the game in everything. This game, I don't know, annoying people, they're not part of that anymore. It's all a game. And this isn't on the level of the mind, because this is in esotericism. This game, I don't know, those people who used to annoy me before, they're just not part of it anymore. It's all just a game. It's a deep mystical experience. You realize everything is one. It's precisely on the level of a deep mystical felt experience. You just clearly realize and understand that everything is one and one is everything. And it's such a fantastic feeling, really.
I understand you're talking. It brings a great sense of ease and relaxation in actions. Complete freedom, yes. I understand perfectly what you're talking about. It's not a detachment like I asked you before. Isn't that a bit of a detachment, huh? It's such bliss from connecting with the world. When you realize that you can really play with all of this. I've had experiences where I realized that I can actually do whatever I want here. In fact, question is, what do I want? And I'm like that. What do I want? This is separate. The question is, yes, but I understand that there's this real sense of relaxation that comes in, like some blocks probably again. They fade away, and you realize that everything you're doing here is okay, and it's good, and there's no tension, there's no fear, first and foremost. Yes, absolutely. It's okay, and it's good, and there's no tension, there's no fear. First and foremost, yes, absolutely. What I want to say, why I'm leading to this, is that I know this feeling, and I have IT. It gets lost all the time. I just believe that it's the same for everyone. When we're there, it seems like everything is just perfect, everything is great. But then we come back to reality, our reality, and those same blocks come back.
But that's exactly what we were talking about. You have a certain connection with yours. By the way, thank you. It's this thread. You can feel it. This thread. But if you definitely came to my course, you would sharpen it. I expanded, stabilized, and made sure it didn't get lost.
You can live without limiting structures, fears, doubts, or emotional ups and downs. Live without limiting structures. Without fears, without doubts. Without any worries, without emotional ups and downs, swings.
Yes, of course. Well, listen, if you don't praise yourself, no one will praise you, but still, it's just a statement of fact. So, after a certain number of years of this practice, then I'm not angry. Well, not really, like in the background somewhere, something. I'm absolutely not offended by anyone. Honestly,
you're right there, just on the edge, like many people are right now. There are practices where you say, I'm not angry, and just suppress the aggression. Guys, you suppressed it.
No, I didn't suppress it. I actually worked through it. I was pulling it out and processing it, pulling it out and processing it.
And now, simply put, it's not that you're not angry, but that you're not triggered, right? Not triggered, right? No hooks, no anger, aggression unlikely.
There's no point in being angry.
So basically, you can, if necessary, show some aggression, but the situations don't arise. So the situations that arise, they don't evoke those emotions in you. But of course, I'm striving for that level.
100%.
For me, that's still a high level. A lot of things in life get to me. Yeah, about some experiences.
It's exactly to grab you. For me, since I'm trying right now, probably nothing gets to me. You know, like, look, if someone gets to you, for example, a person, I mean, I can see his energetic architecture. I understand that he became like this because of that. That he 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there in terms of spirit level and blocks and so on and so forth. And getting upset about blocks, about setups is kind of strange. It's like getting upset with a computer. And getting upset with the spirit, again, is pointless. Because the spirit itself isn't really happy about it.
This block
is because he has to live there, in this person. So, no, I mean, it's pointless. Getting angry, irritated, or upset is pointless.
I see in every person a combination of mind and spirit. Like you see, you just need one glance to grasp it. It's an approach to knowledge. Somehow it comes to you or however you see it.
Let's put it this way. If I start tuning into this topic, maybe 2 perspectives won't be enough. Yeah, well, I just feel it. For many years, this topic works. And it's the only topic I've been working on my whole life. I have a school in a mono, such a mono. You can call one direction branded, just higher. I've been practicing for 11 years, which means 25 years, and in the school, just higher. I exclusively focus on everything related to this topic. And first and foremost, it's blocks. So I don't work with cards. I don't work with runes. I don't know with anything else, just the higher stuff.
I focus on everything. As contact with the higher self provides everything.
Yeah, that's one technique that, if you master it, makes the need for other tools disappear.
That's also an interesting aspect. What are we used to now? Are you talking about cards? I said I had a period a long time ago when I got really into tarot. And I saw how this connection was created for me. And I constantly, for any question, I was turning to the tool, to the tool, to the tool. I saw it and thought, damn, I really don't like this. But it worked. Yes, Vitya, probably. It worked 100%. It worked really accurately, but I felt like I was getting dumber. I was getting even dumber, even more. So I was constantly, instead of turning inward, reaching out, I'm like, oh, well, now I'll just use this card, this Rollock, my favorite spread, and I'll find out everything. And so the constant shifting of responsibility within me nurtured even more infidelity. This childishness that if something happens, I can't go anywhere without this tool. I can't, like you said, decide what to eat if I haven't laid out the cards. Well, not exactly like that, but there's always this tension, like, how should I act? I need to ask the cards. And here it turns out that when you have this contact, yeah, you don't even ask yourself those questions at all. Or you have a question and you just go in and check.
I'm 50-50. Some things you just don't even question anymore. And some things, yeah, you just go in and check, right? And look, if you've been in the higher realm for many years, this contact is kind of always with you. So I feel it at the level of my chest. Yeah, right here. And the upper chakra and this chakra, 2 chakras mainly work with the higher self. So the upper 7th chakra and the 4th chakra. And by the way, I think the blocks in the 7th and 4th chakras are the strongest. They have the strongest influence because if it's like there's just this aggression towards everyone, this tightness, this feeling of being blocked and distrust towards people. This will have a strong influence. So it turns out that in the 4th chakra, there's a lack of at least some fundamental love for people, for the world. And the 7th chakra, well, it's basically this overall aspiration upwards towards spirituality. If that's not there, then a person is completely material. I've been doing it my whole life. I was logging, cutting down trees and all that. And like, just on this topic, it will be a bit for him. It's also difficult, but those kinds of people don't come to the course higher up mind.
So it turns out that with the higher self, you can, in a way, get anything you want. But I want to summarize what you were saying. Any talents that a person wishes or desires, or any aspirations and wishes that are approved by the higher self, find out what you need to know. And this can be done, how to say, in an eco-friendly way, without using any special techniques. So no one needs to be harmed by the ritual, to put it bluntly.
Well, if you specifically want rituals, with them, you can basically pull out just about anything. There are even things that the spirit does not approve of. Yes, what the spirit does not approve of, yes, that's why everyone uses them. But it won't be very harmonious for you yourself. Because you're kind of going against your purpose And will there be any consequences? There will be consequences. Because of this, with magicians, usually when someone seeks help, it often happens. That one thing seems to be healed, but everything else falls apart.
By the way, healing too, right? It turns out you can request it from a person's higher self rather than their lower self.
Yes, but healing is a bit of a separate topic because, again, there's a block underlying any illness. If you've unhooked it in the higher self, yes, of course, yes. But, by the way, I have examples where guys have really unhooked blocks. And they were healed from a wide variety of illnesses, both physical and mental. But here's the problem, in my experience, some illnesses are easier. It's just faster to resolve things through a psychotherapist. For example, sometimes I tap into the higher self and I see that some things can just be resolved faster through a psychotherapist. This is about illnesses.
There is a teaching for that.
That's exactly it. Yes, that's exactly it. A real professional with a bunch of diplomas, for sure. So,
it turns out she understood with the oscillation that we also have talents.
Talents. Any practices, mystical, deep, any of them can be extracted.
Any practices? I get what you're talking about. I've had experiences like that, but honestly, I probably didn't take it seriously. I thought about it, because it was exactly how you said. So she comes ready. I was like, well, cool. But I didn't do anything with her. I didn't post it anywhere. I didn't record anything. I just worked with her myself, cried there. I had them, but then I didn't post them anywhere and forgot about them. You forgot about me, and now you're telling me about it, and I've had two completely different practices come to me. Just hold on to the real package, 1234, and now take it more seriously this time. I'll take this approach. And I'm really interested in all questions related to purpose. And all questions related to the universe. The reason I'm asking is because, we have so many concepts, each one, she says, the swan, the crayfish, and the pike. Everyone is pulling in different directions, this one this way, that one that way. From the higher self, you can really get the true answer. Am I understanding correctly?
Yes. Well, again, it depends on the depth of the approach to the higher self. At a higher level, that will be the answer. A little bit superficial, but true. And the further you go, the deeper it gets. It will become broader and fuller.
Is it possible for two people to come in and ask the same question, both connected to the higher self, but receive different answers?
No, that's the main criterion, yes. Because of this, for example, when we go in groups, we always have a chat, a discussion chat, and there the guys exchange experiences. And the groups are really large groups of 100, 200, or even 300 people, depending on the group. And you read there. For example, the topic is like this. Sometimes I throw questions at them, and they write through the higher self that they see things absolutely identically. Exactly those guys who are really... The experiences are already identical, but expressed with different words, different adjectives. Yet the essence is just 100% the same.
It's true that all teachings are essentially about the same thing, and that's where some distortions start to appear, in some minor details. In fact, take any teaching, even the ancient ones, and you'll find the same thing. Described just in different words, maybe with different names, but it's all about the same. It's the same story here. Why do I ask? Exploring angels, it's diverse, I want to discuss it. She turned out to be also versatile, everyone thinks their own, and I just know that you seem to be an expert in this, and you described this whole picture to me so thoroughly with all the ranks and gradations. So I want to touch on this topic as well. Let's clear up all the contradictions. Let's break down what kinds and types there are, and what you actually understand by angels. Well, let's dive into this topic.
I'm probably going to say an unpopular phrase here, but I still have to say it. That I do not consider myself an expert on angels. But I just studied this topic in eShop. So what did I see? I saw that there are different kinds of angels. That's first. When I dive into the topic of angels, I was literally rewatching this just yesterday. Angels is a term. Under any term, there is always an egregor. Always. Because there's no such thing as a term that doesn't come from some kind of egregor. One thing is the light essence. This is already a more blurred story. There's no strong egregorial story here. But there is one for angels. Under angels, first of all, lies the Christian egregor. It's quite obvious and strong. So they really took this topic. I dug deep. I truly dug into the source. and saw exactly the essence of what are called angels in Christianity. I saw beings that are tall, strong, powerful, with swords, conditionally with swords. These are the kinds of warriors, conditionally the warriors of the Lord. Then, by the way, the guys who really understand Christianity told me, to be honest, I hardly read any books. It's exactly there in esotericism, in religion. Then the guys come to me and say, well, this is in this and that is in that. Well, that's how it works. And they are really strong warriors. They are truly warriors of light, very powerful, who drove away the darkness for a certain time. They had a clear mission on the planet. They were definitely not from here. They were clearly from some other worlds. They were sent here for work, to clear certain layers, the ones that got polluted, cleaners like that, and they cleaned. What's interesting is that my wife, when we were digging into past lives, separate from my research, angels, she saw one of her past lives exactly in this. It was in this body of a huge being, very bright, with a sword that drives away the darkness. And interestingly, this was her first incarnation here on this earth. Everything adds up. So essentially, one of her past lives was in these angels. Formally speaking, if we use the language from the Bible, it's probably an archangel. That's exactly them. I wanted to ask, what's the difference?
I have a lot of questions now. First of all, someone says it's impossible. Yesterday he was a person, and tomorrow he became angels. Or the other way around. And some people, on the other hand, say that we can evolve our consciousness from this body to an angelic state, and vice versa. So, where is the truth from the perspective of the higher self?
It depends on what you mean by angels. Again, it's a term. As soon as we hit a term, we need to immediately clarify what we mean by it. Well, if we're talking about those original angels, the ones that cleaners, let's call them cleaners, yes. If without, egregor. Well, here you go, my wife. It was a really vibrant life. We went into details and remembered it right here. And then she was here. She didn't want to stay on the planet. She completed her mission. She got attached to the planet, explored, and then comic stories unfolded as her soul's experience accumulated. And she just got attached to this planet, and then she decided to play around here a bit, and after that, some comic stories started to unfold. Twists and turns began to happen, and the soul's experience started to accumulate here. It's precisely in this astral plane, specifically of this planet, that we were talking about. And that's it. She stayed here, and she has stayed here now. Here.
Look, again, you're talking about the archangel. First of all, what's the difference between angels and archangels?
Yes. Well, in this concept that we were just talking about, the archangel is the supreme angel, the one who is the strongest, the most powerful. It's like the most, here it is, the most special pursuers.
Well, all of them still have the function, roughly speaking, to fight against evil.
Well, conditionally speaking, yes. Well, it's just that some of them are at a higher level and some are at a lower level.
Yes. And here's my next question, which specifically interests me the most. These all box of light. Yes, I have a big question. As far as I know, yes, angels are, conditionally speaking, very high vibrational beings compared to us humans, at least. Why is it like this? Damn. The concept of war is present with these guys. I will destroy everyone in the war? What amazes me the most is when people claim that they communicate with angels. These are the kind of guys who destroy everyone around. They are constantly angry, they are always judging others, they are always telling other people how to live. This is just all from your list, where ideally there is no contact with the higher self.
Look, here I'm also relying on that. Also about the story of his wife. It was a very high being, very high, very pure. And it drove away the darkness playfully. There wasn't a feeling that you were rushing forward with anger, with a twisted face. No, it's a game. Again, at the higher self, it really corresponds to the higher self, at the higher. Even the idea of war itself doesn't feel real. It's just terrible. This may seem strange. Yes, but there is complete acceptance of all paths. And these archangels and angels that drove away the darkness, they really match up. They match with the higher self. There is no denial of that path, but also what you were talking about is not there either. There's no anger. The janitor sweeps the street calmly. That's how they were. Not exactly good in the classic sense, like pure light and love. The janitor sweeping the trash doesn't do it with an angry face. He sweeps, knows why, he's here. These beings were like that. I can't say they were classically good. But again, the janitor isn't good, but he's not evil either. That's how they were. I can't say they were exactly good in the classic sense, like pure light, love, and goodness. But again, the janitor is not good, but he's not evil either. He just does his job, and he knows why he came here, and he knows how to do this job. That's how they were. This is if we're talking about the image. And nowadays, there can be different types of angels. Nowadays, angels are, by the way, an egregorial structure within Christianity and in general. So this is a specific layer that is called angels. And they are called to help people. That is, sometimes they say there, yes, I made contact with the angels. It's unlikely they mean those guys with swords, because those guys couldn't care less about people, to put it mildly. They're in a completely different realm. They were cleaning up certain so-called hellish worlds here on our planet. They were cleaning up certain so-called hellish worlds here on our planet. So they didn't communicate with the division.
So the division, so there are these separate servants who drive away the darkness, as you say. They drove away Aisha.
Now they have a different company. These are actually matters from long ago.
So they are not here now? Right now, all my favorite warriors of light are communicating with Archangel Michael. I love these guys. What's this? Are these more of the same?
There can be different options. To directly observe the field of the person who is communicating, but also from the higher self, it's preferable, of course, for all of this to happen. I'm just fired up that the line is striking in these wars of light, that there's a massive condemnation, a massive...
aggression.
Maybe.
So am I right that, again, Archangel Michael is not communicating with people right now?
Let's say Archangel Michael, as I feel him, is a very large layer of the egregor. A very large layer. Sometimes my colleagues and I joke that Archangel Michael and Archangel Gabriel are like a collective account, where a bunch of different guys can come in under them and communicate with people, you know, in different ways, and communicate with people. Well, in different ways. So this is also the egregor. Maybe, and a certain entity could be. So it's like a brand, you know, Archangel Michael account. Yeah, but for that, I guess it's not the USA. There are administrators, there are all these various assistants and so on. Is there Archangel Michael himself as an archetype? I feel there is. But I suspect, or rather, I really feel that he himself is unlikely to make contact. I believe it was someone from those strong ancient souls who were involved here. He can sometimes guide things a little, but it's again like a director of some large company. Does he communicate with the population? Yeah, probably not. Rather, it will be a special department that will handle this. It's the same here. So as of today, angels are either direct egregors, pure egregors, some that do. How, yeah, like that. Moreover, this could be direct. Not a collective account of souls that communicates, but it could be a direct egregor where there aren't really any souls present. It's just made light energy programmed like a bot. So it could be a bot, Artem Georgievich. Yeah, as an option. This could be one such option. Another option under angels could simply mean spiritual helpers, such as guides.
Yeah, these concepts are constantly confused. So it's different. Archangel Michael and Gabriel and all the others.
These are terms again. Often, for example, you call out angels come to me. Well, for example, your spirit helper might come to you. Who is this spirit helper?
Who is he? How does he look?
Yes, where is he? It could be a real spirit, your own, who is there in that world from your ancestral family. He can come to you in response to such a call, because for them, calling upon an angel is a call to the light forces. And then whoever comes, a collective entity might come, especially if you call upon it. An egregor might come. It can come directly. A spirit is alive without any theft. The same but different. Just yes, yes, yes. Well, for them, you see, they see this concept of angels as, well, still a kind of simplification. So it's still a certain term. You are in a way formally calling upon the light forces. Well, with those terms that you know, the light forces do come to you. So who will come there? You need to look to higher. Again, the higher ones, I can feel that clearly. The one you're in contact with is a collective entity. Either it's a bot or it's real. A high and bright spirit has come directly. And there, you know, there's actually a group of souls, very high, very bright, very pure, who hardly ever incarnate here on earth, but they help people
What kind of souls are these?
Very old souls, ancient souls, which belong to what is called, well, there's like a multi-level management of the world. Maybe somehow. We'll talk about this some more someday. But at a certain level of world management, there is that level, a high level, and at that high level, there are very high souls who see their mission as not incarnating, but rather helping those guys who are incarnating here. Very high helpers.
Primary teachers. Can this be for them?
Yes, including that sometimes they can come in response to requests for angels, because again, angel is a term
Very distorted, filled with different things.
everyone just sees their own in them, that's all.
Okay, we got it. To repeat, it turns out that the archangels, like the egregor, those who were here before, but now they hardly perform any functions here. Those who can come to us are helpers, that is, they are our soulmates. Conditionally, or some friends on the spirit plane, our maybe relatives.
Teachers of teachers.
And the third, this is it. Primary teachers, especially the guides of the earth, they are also called that. I think it's something like that. So, 3 groups. And I'm curious, I have this character. A little round thing, like, with eyes. It can have wings. It might be without, but this is an eye by itself. With spinning rings, in which there are also a lot and lots of eyes. I've heard that somewhere in some religion, they are also described. Some say they are called thrones. Can you tell who this is? Which group they belong to? What creature is this? Is that so?
I understand what you were talking about. Yes. This topic is quite popular on the internet right now. Upon request. Yes, what do real angels look like? Basically, anyone who is currently searching on Google will find what we're talking about. These are like, yeah, rings with some eyes. It doesn't really look very angelic at all.
Well, maybe, yeah. I like him, basically.
You like it?
Well, I'm interested in him for some reason, yes.
There are just pictures on the internet that are really, those eyes are even bloodied.
Oh, no, he's not like that.
It's like this. You see, here we're talking about the difference in vibrations. So if we, again, set aside the egregor, set aside these primary angels and so on, because the Christian egregor can come to you in any form, really in any form. And very often there are such clear signs. Yes, like an angel comes, it's really an angel. There's an angel with wings right in the sky. This is more, well, how I see it. I have a very good attitude towards Christianity. If anything, so I have a very good attitude towards Christianity. I think it's a great path, really heading in the right direction. Well, with some distortions, but by following it, you can eventually get to some messiahs over time. Here, but this is just in case someone happens to read it. But if we're talking about real angels, those high ones, really high souls, which of these 3 groups are they from? All 3?
All 3, okay.
If we break down all 3 as one single group, there's a very big difference in vibrations. They are very high. When I go in there, and I even, how to put it, there are no eyes there. If you describe it, there are eyes, spheres and so on, but there are no eyes, there are no wings. There's just energy that can take different forms, including the one you're talking about. So, can they take on that form? Those round-eyed little ones.
And what's the purpose of that too?
When they come down here, they can take any form. Whether it's stones, or this one, or that one. And now, the most important thing, did they ever take on that form or not?
So the question is, who took on that form?
And now I need to go higher.
Do you want now? Let's go.
Look, if we're talking about those pictures that are on the internet, no.
Are they not angels?
No, those are distortions. Distortions in people's perceptions because they could transition in the form of spheres. Round shape. With the eye, that might be true, but the way they represented it, at least in those pictures, I remember that's not it. It's a distorted perception. It's been filtered. very much so. It's just like an artist. They came here in different forms. They came here in the form of just a light spot. They came here in uniform. A sphere, maybe with an eye. Because they could choose a form that was understandable to humans. So, in order to interact with people, they need to take on a recognizable form. That's exactly the one that the mind will understand. Basically, those glowing spheres with an eye, it's immediately clear that it's something like that. Something higher, but at the same time spiritual, because it can look at you. Well, if you want, you can ask something else while we're here. Some kind of question.
I'm curious about the space where they all live in different realms.
These angels, however they might look, or in one...
Well, if we're talking again about high souls like teachers, they have a similar space. If we're talking about an egregor, well, sort of the collective account of Archangel Michael, it's a different space. So these groups that we just mentioned, they are different spaces.
There are beings like the Suras and Asuras.
That's in that space.
That's a term.
That's also a term, yes.
It depends what is meant.
Well, conditionally in Hinduism, it refers to angels and demons. And various nature gods. It's like a space.
I'm currently feeling this egregor. I see there. Sur Isur. Yeah, there's just so much mixed in there. There's some kind of nonsense there. There are people. I feel each generation interprets these terms differently. I speak as I feel. It seems like each generation has its own interpretation of these terms. It was intimidating. And in general, the egregor of Hinduism, it's very, very multifaceted. It's really multi-layered, very much so. In each layer, there's something unique every century, added something of its own. There are a bunch of entities that have been drawn to this egregor, both light ones and darker ones, because the egregor absorbed a lot of people. He offered a contract to many, and I can see it clearly right now. And even to the souls that come for incarnation, he offered a contract here as well. In different forms, sometimes even in demigods. And it's already hard to say what they were originally. Originally, they understood indeed like a certain light layer quite high in their minds. But, by the way, if you compare it with modern spiritual teachers, the layer that they represent is even higher than the Suras and Asuras. It's a mix, please guide me. Cocktails of everything.
So, please guide me, yes. I agree, when I entered this space as well. It's considered to be the space of the fifth gates. And stepping into this space, I felt like I saw everything there.
A mix, all blended.
A mixture. There are angels and demons and eyes. And some gods, and it feels like this space is where everything you can imagine exists. Any kind of entities, they're all there.
That's how I felt it.
And you just confirmed it. I was surprised, to be honest.
I'm just in shock about what's happening here.
We're sitting here like regular people. As soon as you started doing this. The first time it wasn't as vivid when you were talking about me.
I went really deep.
Right now, I caught the moment when that wave came out from you, that flow. I feel it with my whole body. And right now it was so powerful that it felt like my body was shaking on its own. And I'm already sitting here relaxing. I can't say that it's unpleasant. It's indeed powerful. You know, that kind of power where you can't really sit still. Well, of course it was a bit uncomfortable for me, but like this, I could really feel that my body was kind of trembling inside every cell.
I felt that vibration.
It's warm, and I actually saw how it came out of you and touched me. So the first time I didn't track it, but now I actually saw how that arrow was like this.
Wow. Wow, really interesting sensations.
The first time they weren't as vivid. And for me, I'm just amazed. It's such a contrast that we're sitting here like with an ordinary person chatting, everything's fine. And then you gently close your eyes and this flow just sweeps me away.
They also wanted to convey this information. Actually, when something was coming to you, I had the feeling that certain layers wanted to be transmitted.
I felt that too. I just knew that we needed to. Today we definitely need to talk about angels. And I have. This topic is resonating with me. I started talking about it in my blog, and a lot of light warriors. And some really smart guys got involved. all fighting for their own truth. But I feel like something's off there. And, well, I'm completely satisfied with this concept of trend groups. It's really like that. I think this is the most reasonable perspective on...
That's all.
The energy is really interesting. Honestly, I have more emotions than questions right now after that. To talk about other abilities that you can demonstrate, I even expressed it like that just now, that can be accessed from the higher self. You mentioned the future, that it's possible to see the future. Am I right in understanding that you can see the future and your students come to you?
Who is interested in this topic? Yes?
It seems like everyone is interested, especially seriously. But even in our world, such events happen that... It's hard not to ask myself that question. I even find myself asking this question simply because I don't understand where I should live. Yes, because, well, everyone knows what's happening. And so the question is yes. Do you see, first of all, how the future looks given what's happening right now? How do international conflicts relate to souls incarnating with missions? Is it possible for many people to have such roles? The conflicts between countries that are happening right now, how do we connect all of this with everything we've talked about? That souls are incarnating, each with their own mission. So many people chose to come, going the wrong way, who are currently in all these zones chose to come to incarnate and to experience all of this. It's true that people are going the wrong way and that they found themselves in these circumstances. This
Not the most favorable outcome of events.
And maybe if they restore contact with their higher self, I think it will all come to an end. In general, there are a lot of questions about this topic. Tell me, how do you see it?
I'll try to be brief. Look, as of today, we are moving upward. It's felt very clearly. In terms of vibrations, our world is moving upward. It's not moving downward. This is proven very simply. Techniques of higher self. I'm right now, as of today, well, it's been about 6 months, right? I have a school, and in 6 months, you can really connect with your higher self. Maybe some people need a bit more time. They have a lot of blocks. But before, essentially, this path of disidentification with the higher self was kind of a path of conditional enlightenment to some extent. Before, it took years to reach it. In monasteries for decades. As of today, it's been 6 months, sitting in office, with one eye on the higher self and the other eye on Excel or somewhere in Word. It became easier, including all sorts of superpowers. I just know a little bit about this topic. Although contact with the higher self is formally a form of superpower, it can also be called that. In the 1970s, it was much worse. For example, telekinesis was much harder to achieve back then than it is now. Now it's just many times faster.
You call such things telekinesis. Does anyone not believe in all of this?
Well, they just don't see it.
Are you sure about that?
Sure.
Why so sure?
But I have certain acquaintances who are into this topic. A certain master of mine. Are you for real? Yes, it's me. My master is specifically about superpowers. It's more like we're not so much teacher and student anymore, but more like two good friends, very ancient ones. And yes, he is skilled.
What?
He can do everything. He can do telekinesis, he can do levitation. But that's a different story. And I used to practice telekinesis myself. Telekinesis is a working story, but again, in the 1970s, things were much worse than they are now. Now it's much better. We rise up through vibrations like world. This is with 100% certainty. But it's like a balloon that rises up and it has ballast. Because in the Middle Ages, during the Renaissance and so on, a lot of dark, dense, heavy energy accumulated there. It still hangs in the soul of the planet. Let's put it this way. So it's like in the astral etheric plane, but already at the level of the entire Earth. It hangs and it needs to be dealt with somehow. And it's engineers. They're sitting there and thinking, engineers? There are really engineers up there. They sit and think, high level, very experienced guys. How can we get rid of this ballast? What's his name? Send it down while we ourselves rise up, including through wars, including through cataclysms, including through... What you're saying right now, it's completely incomprehensible to the mind.
How is that?
How does it ignite this darkness? The simplest example, let's imagine two arguing guys from some Italian or Spanish family. Yeah, and they're there arguing, throwing all sorts of forks and spoons at each other. Before the start of this whole performance, they probably have this feeling of anger, aggression. They let it out, exhaled, and move on with their lives. This conflict, entering into a conflict, conflict actually ignites heavy, dense, accumulated energy, some kind of disasters. Things like earthquakes, floods. This is also a person just spilling it all out. Through all of this, he directly, by touching this pain, he just spills it all out.
Listen, but at what cost?
At a stylish price, a high price.
What should those people do? Who does this affect? Cataclysms or wars? It's from contact with another. Me. So this is the purpose of a person to go through all of this? Or is it opposite from loss of contact?
If he just happened to be there, he ended up right in that place. Then most likely, yes, because most likely this is his well, that's
selective.
It's his choice, soul. If he just brushed past it, then it's not a fact. It could just be a background story, which is also somewhat needed for him, for something. Again, a story from my life. People love stories. A few times, I almost got caught up in certain terrorist stories. So, for example, there was an explosion, I think, in the center of Moscow many years ago. The metro. In the metro, they blew something up, I think, either at Pushkin Square or something like that. I was studying at Moscow State University. For those who don't know, yes, I graduated from Moscow State University with a degree in political science, international relations, and then I also did my postgraduate studies there. So, for the system, I'm not an esoteric. For the system, I'm a PhD in international political science. So I used to commute every day on the metro, and that day I forgot my bag at home. I never forgot anything at home. A suitcase? I mean, it's a huge suitcase full of textbooks. How could you forget it? And I forgot it here. I'm already approaching the metro. I remember I go back, grab it, and then I continue on my way, getting off at this transfer. I think it was Barikadnaya. I don't remember anyway. Yeah, the metro station. I get out and everything is already cordoned off. And they tell me, guys, there was an explosion 3 minutes ago. I was right in it. And if I hadn't forgotten my bag, well, so according to my destiny, I just wasn't meant to get involved with this topic. Someone needs it.
Well, again, yes, what I'm getting at is that by connecting with the higher, because really for people, even if they have these threads, not everyone has that contact 100% like you do. I am absolutely sure of this. There are only a few such people. If they establish that connection, they'll be able to avoid these events that are happening everywhere. It seems to me that they occur everywhere. Even in Bali, we recently had volcanoes and some other stuff happening. It's all going on everywhere. If a person has a connection with the higher, will it protect them from such events?
Yes, definitely. They will feel the overall flow in which direction it's going. And they will see that if their flow is going a bit in the wrong direction, then they will steer away from it. And it's kind of rolled up.
What do you think about the future of countries? How do you see it? Of course, everyone is interested in this question right now. What do you see in the future for Russia, for Ukraine, for America? Which countries are particularly significant for us? Is there still hope for people now?
About Russia, first of all, because I'm from Russia. I was born in Russia.
I'm also from Russia, but for me it doesn't matter. I can have the number 21 and in the 21st century I have peace. I really don't understand how you can divide Russia, America, and other countries. Yes, that's true. But, okay, I'm sure many live in a different paradigm, so yes, I wanted to say that for the viewer. Let's start with Russia.
But in Russia, the energy is interesting. For the last 6 months, I have felt as if some kind of tap has opened. Over Russia, there's been a clean, purifying flow for the last 45 days or so. It's really obvious. I was shocked. It's very strong. It's very powerful. There's some kind of restructuring, some kind of rethinking, just this powerful, pure stream, if you can feel it.
By the way, write in the comments if you live in Russia since February or March. Do you feel something similar?
By the way, after certain events, after of
in Crocus?
In Crocus. After that, right over there.
Well, apparently that was the last straw, I think.
Well, that's a different story. There, we even discussed what caused it to happen.
So, again, what can we relate this to? Are these streams being sent down to us by angels? Or what are these purifying streams
These are the streams of a new world. The streams of a new reality. She is coming here, and it really is coming everywhere. Right now, it will spread throughout the CIS, if we can call it that. So there will be Ukraine and Belarus as well. There will be global rethinking from all sides. Absolutely, from all sides. New times, new opportunities. So it will be right there. It will be felt. I don't want to go into details about those countries right now, but this new stream will be felt everywhere in one way or another.
It's quite a blessed stage.
Yes, it is blessed. So there will be a general harmonization of all of this.
So you're not one of those people like many I meet here who think we're all going to die, that everyone will be flooded, that there will be cataclysms, all those desires.
There will be cataclysms, there will be flooding, there will be wars around the world.
Wait, what blessing is that?
But everything is blessed and everything is good. Because from a position, okay, well, look, I don't see a world war where everyone is fighting everyone. Not at all. There will be some cataclysms. Yes, there will be more. That's true. I see them. They will happen. There will be military actions.
Can you say where the nearest cataclysm will be, or the epicenter of some conflict point?
It's hard to say, because when I try to approach it from a higher perspective, I look at that layer of architects. It depends on them where they want to make a release, so to speak, of this energy, where they will consider it necessary to release it. I put it this way. In all the areas that are currently experiencing conflicts, where there is a long-standing, smoldering global conflict at the state level or at the ecological level or something else, it could be there. And maybe it won't happen if there's enough release through another point.
So there's nothing predetermined, like something will explode there the day after tomorrow or anything like that.
But it keeps changing all the time. When this well-known story between Russia and Ukraine started, the realities were changing daily. Actually daily. So you look into the future, back and forth, back and forth. And by the way, many people were wrong with their predictions because the turbulence was very strong. It was really felt, you know, it's like a sandstorm around you and it completely blocked everything. It blocked everything and you couldn't see anything through it. That's why many people were wrong back then. They made a bunch of predictions, but then they didn't come true. That's exactly why at that time I wasn't doing anything at all.
Yeah. And as you're talking, I remember that I heard a similar concept from another guide about how things are constantly changing, that it's really not the same every day. From a guide whom I consider very insightful, but from the guys who raise questions for me, there were a lot of different predictions thrown around. I have a question. What I felt, okay, what you were talking about, what I felt today, honestly surprised me more than I expected. And I'm personally interested too. And for our viewers whom you inspired, and who were inspired by the information you shared, please tell us, briefly, but in more detail, what's happening at your school. You mentioned that it's a 6-month training. Yes, right now, yes. Tell me, what is it like, what's happening, and what about the person? There he makes contact with the higher. I totally agree with that, 100%. But did anyone tell him?
If he doesn't stumble upon some of his own blocks, and if he needs to go to a psychotherapist who works there, then it will be 100%. If he, again, doesn't run away from the psychotherapist, then yes, I'm saying it like this, 100%. If you don't leave this path, then you will arrive.
Intention.
The power of spirit.
Willpower needs to be manifested. Divine quality? Yes. What is the methodology? This path.
6 months. The first month is about stopping the inner dialogue, because without this, without cleansing, this inner room will be extremely difficult. Many people live so much in their minds that their minds are constantly singing. Some are singing, dancing in the background, and something else. The whole first month we work only on this. The second month is about working with blocks, with beliefs. I'm generally explaining in detail. Well, today we won't have enough time. So I actually have about 10 hours on the topic of blocks.
The topic of blocks is really great.
Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4 here. And we analyze them. We look for them. We work through them. Then, partially from the second month, if someone really has strong blocks, can already be sent to a psychotherapist to work through them. Third month is about connecting with higher self. The whole month is a basic practice of connecting with the higher self. The first 2 months are kind of a preparation for this topic. From the third month, it's about connecting with the higher self. The fourth month is about simple answers to questions from the higher self. Well, something at the level of their everyday life, relationships, that kind of thing. And the fifth month is a complex answer to the question from the higher self. That's exactly the purpose. The feeling of God. By the way, we have a practice how to feel God in the higher self. You can do it countless times because each time you go deeper and deeper and you feel wider, more complete. It's an absolutely indescribable feeling. So the guys come out of there, as they say, you'll never be the person you were before. Including there, I have practices related to past lives, definitely reviewing past lives, healing the block in the higher self. I'm talking about all of this as we approach the fifth month, all sorts of skills and talents. How do we bring out what we've been talking about today? That's also in the fifth month. And so on, there are many practices. And in the sixth month, everything that didn't fit into the first 5 months. This is Age of Soul. We're discussing more additional techniques like how to feel another person. Is he perhaps from your family or not? Have you possibly met him in past lives or not? It's like your relative or more like a friend or acquaintance and so on. All your karmic interactions. This all comes closer to the sixth month. Everything can be done too. To see, then you can determine what I like to call a bit hypey, spirituality through a photograph. Spirituality can be measured. By the way, this practice is easier than the practice of determining the age of the soul. The practice of determining the age of the soul can be felt, but there are no guarantees here because it's a very noble practice. You need to connect with your higher self and then through your higher self, reach out to someone else's higher self. To do this, you need to be very well connected to your higher self, in order to start feeling the higher self of a friend.
Of a friend?
Yes. Someone else too, of course. Yes. And the practice of determining spirituality is simple. It's the degree of the spirit's manifestation in a person. And you can use this practice, as you know, guideline sort. Yes, for yourself first and foremost, not to feed your ego. You're not spiritual. You're not spiritual, right? There, I'm 15% more spiritual than you. No, it's specifically to understand whether you're moving in the right direction or not. How many blocks do you have left? How much stronger is your light? Plus, you can choose E. Using the same technique to choose for yourself, I don't know, perhaps a teacher or a life partner, master teachers, gurus, and so on, because
you definitely need to check your guru, and we all need one. Some kind of checklist.
It's true. We had certain studies in my team. We conducted a study on gurus. There's a lot of spiritual ego among many, unfortunately. I mean, again, I don't want to speak ill of the guys, but there's a lot of spiritual ego, a lot of blocks, a lot of beliefs, and not always a manifested spirit. So it's quite an interesting thing. This all falls into the sixth month. Here are 6 months. This is specifically in the format of a subsidized group. So there are 2 formats, subsidized group. I'll launch an exclusive subsidized group for your project. I usually have groups twice a year, and basically it was supposed to happen in January. But for your group, we'll do it in a month. Launch. So guys, who wants to come?
Yes, I also want to join the anti-code groups. I know how much this training costs. I recommend everyone to follow the link and at least take a look at the program and what will be happening there. Honestly, I'm thinking about going for this training myself, especially after what happened today. And here, it seems to me, is the moment when no one will be able to dodge it. That I don't have money or something else because, you know, how affordable it is. I think it's made what? You are really in some kind of service. I might not entirely agree with this in any way, but I genuinely and wholeheartedly believe it's a great mission specifically for people. So dear ones, for those who resonated with this, I think that...
I'll say more. My training used to cost 3,000 rubles. We haven't changed it. This price, well, actually, that's probably all for the year. We just started broadcasting now because, you know, it really doesn't match at all.
So I told you I probably wouldn't trust such prices if I didn't know you. Oh. Yes, in general, this is really very easy for everyone. Feel the resonance if you have it. Then
there is a VIP course. The VIP course is the entire course all at once, all 6 months. And my personal kind of mentorship, guidance, answers to questions, not in a group, because after all, in a group, I don't have time to answer personally. Guys, that's just too much. This is really personal. So I'll look at the photo there and I'll guide you somehow, give you some tips.
You just give yourself into slavery?
I give myself into slavery. Yes, no. I give myself to service. It's a little different.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for such an interesting conversation. The flow that you conducted here, it was, at the very least, unique. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Friends, all the links on how to interact with Danil can be found in the description. All the details. So, we touched on a lot with you. Today we also touched on interesting topics like egregores. I became very interested. I can see that you've clearly studied this topic deeply as well. I would like to talk to you in more detail about our futuristic future. Plus, you touched on topics like that. We just don't have time to touch on all of this. Right now, you touched on teleportation, telekinesis. I see what a huge amount of information we can discuss with you. What question am I not mentioning to you? You're ready to discuss everything and in great depth. We just have limited time today. Dear ones, if you're interested in any of these topics, so much has already been said here, right? Teleportation, telekinesis, levitation. Yes, your master is a master of levitation, other civilizations. So please write what exactly interests you more. Leave your comments. I think we will definitely meet again for another session based on your requests. So please give your feedback, and I think that 2 are definitely waiting.